such a privilege to introduce a good friend of mine who I've gotten to know over the past 2 months. It's Mr. Doug Austin. Welcome to the show, my
Thank you for
friend.
having me, Eddie.
Good to see you. I'm going to shake your hand because we're in the same space.
All right.
It's so cool.
Okay.
Not on Zoom for once. So, Doug, it's been a pleasure getting to know you, but I don't think I've ever heard the whole story. So, I'd love to hear your testimony of faith. And specifically, what I like to do is go to the beginning. How did your faith walk begin?
Well, my faith work began when I was born. I mean, I was born into a Christian home. My mother was a staunch Baptist. I don't know what my father was, but so I was raised in the church, basically. And so I knew Christ. I knew of Christ. I knew, about the church. I knew about the Baptist faith. That's for sure. But there was always an interesting thing about my faith. When you talk about the faith journey, every time I walk to our church, I always have to pass this mysterious church called Saint Joseph, and I always remembered. I always looked at it and I'm like, what's in there? What's in there? And my sister, who was 12 years older than me, she'd walk to church with me, and I always wanted to go in. She goes, "No, you don't want to go in there. That's some white folks' religion, you know, stuff like that." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, not for me." But it's always in the back of my mind. What does that church look like? And as I was growing up and everything else, something you may not have known about me, I do sing a little bit. So when I was a kid, I was involved in all these different choirs. And during my high school choir day, we did a concert in that very church, and I got to see what it looked like for the first time. And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, wow, this is pretty impressive. It was a small church, but it was impressive to me. Needless to say, um, as I got older, we're talking about the 70s, and, and so, I wanted to be a player, pimp, and part-time movie star. So that's where I worked out my way on that. So I got involved in drugs, a lot of criminal activity and everything else. And I pushed God to the side. It's just like, boom, put it to the side. And I joined the service, tried to go back into church, tried to go back into faith, but I just didn't stick. It was, because
Baptist? Back to the Baptist church at that
I,
point?
I didn't care at any time. It was a church. It was in
Sure.
matter of fact, I was stationed in Germany. They had a little church service. You had this one guy, yeah, you need to go to church, and he was like that guy where you go like, okay, I want to straighten my life out because I was doing a lot of partying and a lot of drinking, especially over Germany, good German beer, and probably pretty getting really wasted. And it started, see, I'm also an alcoholic and an addict, and I inherited that from my father. So drinking was quite normal for me, and everything else. And there was a couple moments where I had that lucid thing that I said, you know what, I know I need to get back to God. I need to get Christ, and this will end all my problems, because I was starting to run into problems. And but it didn't stick. I kept going in and out, in and out, in and out. And finally, I'm going like, okay, this is not working. Might as well give in. So, it got progressively worse. And as I moved from Germany to back to the States, I was stationed in what was formerly, I don't know what it's called now, Fort Bliss, Texas. No, Fort Bliss and El Paso, Texas. And that's when I ended up coming here to Boise. And worst case scenario, I'm 24 years old and I get involved in a murder. All right. So after all said and done, I end up with a life sentence. Now, that life sentence, the way the sentence structure is today, this will kind of confuse some people, but I was sentenced to an indeterminate life, which meant that I was parole eligible in 10.
Oh, after 10 years.
After 10
okay.
years, I was parole eligible. So I'm going like, good. I did 10 years. I can do 10 years standing on my head. Boom, I'll be out, resume my life. I went in at 24. I'll be out at 34. I'm good.
Yeah.
Golden, right? So I went in there and I continued in my ways of partying and everything else. Now, there were several things that were happening in my family as this was going on. As I started before, my father was an alcoholic and addict, and I inherited a disease from him. And all of a sudden, lo and behold, God cured him of his alcoholism. So you think I would be happy about that, right? No, I was pissed, straight pissed. Because, God did for him what he couldn't do for his only son. I was his only son. And he did for him what he couldn't do for me. He couldn't stop drinking when I was a child. So I was pissed. And so we had a deal. And here was the deal. Dad, you can write me while I'm in jail. But if I see the letters DOG in any of the letters, I'm tearing them up. I'm ripping them up and everything else. I don't want to have anything to do with God. As a matter of fact, I stayed far away as possible from the whole concept of God. And my mom, oh God bless her, she said the wisest thing, and it always sticks with me. And my father said, he was talking to my mom, he said, Hazel, I don't know, we lost him. I don't know what to do. And my mom, in her infinite wisdom, said, Bill, we planted the seed, but let God do the rest. Right? She told me this later after I came back. But that's another story. But anyway, so after a while, I'm still, drinking, using, and everything else. While in prison, yes, surprisingly, you do get all that stuff in there. And so 10 years roll around. I go to my first board. Okay. So I'm sitting there. My father got me a lawyer. We're all sitting. And we go through the whole hearing and everything else. And then what they call pass me over or flop me for 5 years. Not a problem. They do that to everyone. They test them. They want to make sure that they hold you up, blah, 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 this, that, and the other thing. And never been in prison, never got caught. I mean, never been in prison, never got caught in prison. So no problem. 5 years.
Meaning before the next board.
Before the next board.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So I can do another 5 years. I did 10. I could do another 5. But in 1996, changed everything for me. When I went up to that board in 1996, this is not what they said, but this is what I heard. Mr. Austin, we see nothing redeemable in you. We have, we don't see a chance, snowball's chance, that you will not go out and hurt somebody else. Therefore, we are going to flop you or hold you for the rest of your life. You are never getting out of prison. Those are the words I heard. That's not what they said, but that's what I heard. All right? That floored me. Because now, literally, I felt that my life was over. And I'll never forget that phone call sitting in the day room, trying to hold back tears. I'm trying to hold it back now, remember. But trying to hold back tears to tell my family, my mother, my father, and my sister, that I am never coming home. That was a rough piece. Being in a room with a bunch of men hooping and hollering at a TV, and I'm trying to hold my composure and trying to hold my strength. But I couldn't hold it. And then I said, you know what? Since I'm not worth living in this world, and the world out there, I'm not worth living in the world, period. And I plan to take my life. And I'll never forget that. That was February 27th, 1997. Now, I'm going to share with you why that date is so significant to me. They had, I waited till everyone went to dinner so I can have some privacy, so that no one can rescue me and everything else. And so I'm sitting there and I'm mustering up the courage to open up a vein. And then there was a knock on my door. I'm like, holy crap. How did they know? Oh no, what? So I'm taking my stuff underneath my bed, underneath the mattress, I go open the door, and God rest his soul, this was one of there were so many fine COs there who were trying to help people. And this was one of them. His name was Sergeant Latulip. God rest his soul. He passed away later on, a couple of years after all this happened. And Sergeant Latulip comes to my door, and I'm going like, oh. Okay, hey Sarge, what's up? Put on this fake smile. What's going on? And at the corner of my eye, I see someone crouched at the corner. I'm going like, and I'm thinking that it's we called them goon squads at the time, but they were, ready response team officers. And I'll never forget the thought. Now, remember what I was getting ready to do, and I looked at this and I'm going like, holy cow, this is going to hurt. Because I figured he was going to tackle me. And Sergeant said, step out the door. I said, no, I'm stepping out the door. I see what's up. No, I'm step. He says, this is okay, step out the door. So I step out the door, he goes, put your hands up against the wall. I'm going, okay, I'm going to jail. And that's one of the worst things you could do. You're in prison and you're going to go to jail in prison. That's pretty funny, you know. But I'm like, oh man, this is really getting bad. So he handcuffs me, and he puts me in our day room. Now our day room's kind of like a living room, So he puts me in a common area day room. So I'm handcuffed, sitting on the floor in the day room, and all of a sudden someone else joins me, and then another person is handcuffed and joins me, and everything else. I didn't realize this. I was on the move to go to a prison in Texas because of the overcrowding in the Idaho prison. All right? So, I'm going like, okay, oh, they're going to roll my stuff up. They're going to find this stuff. This is another miracle. So I get rolled up. I get on a bus with just the clothes on my back. It was dead of winter. I mean, it was the coldest night. They finally figured out to give us these blankets to wrap us, up as we marshal all the way through to the bus, get on the bus, go down to the airport. There's people standing with rifles and everything else on top of planes, as they watch us walk through, and everything else. And we get on this plane and we head to San Antonio, Texas. All right. So we're going to a prison in San Antonio, Texas. And this is the cruelest joke of all. This is not a joke, an irony. And I misspoke because that night was actually the 26th of February. Because we landed in San Antonio on the 27th. And that's when it dawned on me. Because everybody was scrambling to make phone calls, and it's so funny. People didn't remember their own home phone numbers. So I don't know how that worked. But I always remember mine. And still to this day remember it. And when I got there and I realized it was the 27th, it was my mother's birthday. What a hell of a birthday present that would have been to find out her baby boy had committed suicide on her birth, on that day. But God spared me. I see it as hindsight, that God spared me. So I'm making that call, and then here's another irony, is that the cell they put me in, right on the opposite side of the wall, was a makeshift chapel. All right? So I'm hanging in there. I'm strong. I'm like, I'm not doing this. But I could hear the music and the singing and the preaching coming through the walls. So I'll never forget. I kind of don't remember what, but all of a sudden, they always come through. Anybody want to go to church? Anybody want to go to church? I'm like, okay, I'm going. So it's a makeshift. It's a library versus a little church chapel and everything else. So I go in there and everything else, and lo and behold, I turn my life back over to Christ. Got rebaptized in a horse trough, of all things. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Well, a little word horse trough, they were dunking people in it. I don't know what the symbolism was, because it was Texas, I guess. That's what was up, Uh, but, so, a couple of us got baptized. I'm like, cool, yeah, I'm baptized. Now, but the Spirit took over me, and I started working on my drug addiction and alcoholism at the same time as I started pouring into the scriptures. Now, I had two good friends. One was an inmate, one was a volunteer. The inmate, I'll always remember him. His name is Dennis Orr. Love him to death. Miss him dearly. And I can't remember what the volunteer's name was, but he was good. And what they did was he kind of brought up inmate preachers while they're in there. And I'm going like, oh, good. I get to study scripture, become a preacher, and go to Bible school and all that good stuff. Yeah, I'm down for it, but I got to learn the basics. I got to get the, scripture stuff. So I'm kind of like studying at the feet of Dennis And and Dennis and I, we did music and everything else for the chapel. And so Dennis puts together this sermon that he's getting ready to get. And I'm sitting there with him, and I'm watching him go scripture by scripture, line by line, verse by verse, and he's laying out this whole thing, that he's going to preach on. And I'm going like, wow, this is awesome, man. And it made sense. It was logical, and it made sense and everything else. And so Dennis turns it over to the volunteer, and he goes, this is what I want to preach on. And I'm going like, yeah, this is going to be good. And the volunteer looks at it and goes, can't preach on that. That's wrong. That's incorrect. That's wrong. Huh? It's wrong. Can't preach on that. And I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was the kind of feeling. And he goes, no, you can't preach on that. I'm sorry. I can't let you go up there with that. And then I sat there as a volunteer, went through the Bible, line by line, verse by verse, everything else, and disproved what Dennis was going to preach, and it made sense. So I'm like, okay, what he was about to preach on makes sense, but he can't preach on it because it's wrong. But what he says and how he proved it was wrong made sense. How many truths are there? So, lo and behold, I left the church. Yeah, I walked away. But I didn't feel comfortable because I loved everything. I felt that spirit, and I loved that spirit, and I missed it and everything else. But then God stepped in, whisked me back to Idaho. Now, there was a very good friend of mine. Matter of fact, the anniversary of his passing is coming up in 2 days, January 3rd. And I'm planning on going to his gravesite. Sorry, squirrel.
July 3rd?
July 3rd. Yeah, July 3rd. Thank you. I knew it was a J in there. Uh, July 3rd. And anyway, so I go to him, and I remember on the yard, he received a master's degree in history. That was such an honor. He had a master's degree, history, in prison. Smart kid. Smart guy. Wasn't a kid. Smart guy. And I'm going like, Tim, I'm having a problem, bro. You know what? And I told him the story I just told you. And he goes, mm-hmm. I said, well, I figured out what I want to do. He says, what? I said, you're a guy, you know history and everything else. I want to know what happened after the Bible was written. I want to know what the apostles believed after the Bible was written. After Acts. I want to know what happened after Acts. Tim looks at me and goes, oh, no problem. I said, I know what you're going to tell me, because Tim was Catholic. And I knew what he was going to tell me. Not quite, but I didn't want to hear it anyway. Because remember, it's the white religion. So I didn't want to hear it. I said, show me. So it gives me this book. And it was The History of Christendom by Father Carroll. And I read that thing from cover to cover. Now, that was only volume 1. I grabbed volume 2, read that, and I'm like, oh. So I read about the Council of Nicaea and all these different things, and what happened with Peter, and then what happened to the next one, and all this stuff. And I'm looking, I'm going, wow. And this is, so I'm watching how Christianity hit Rome and just boom, exploded. I'm like, that's great stuff. And I took the books back to Tim. I said, hey, Tim, that was some good stuff. I learned a lot about that. There was only one problem. He goes, what's that? I said, it was Catholic. He goes, well, that's the only history. I said, no. That's your history. That's not the only history. That's your history. So, so what I did was I noticed where Tim got the book in the chapel library. I said, that's the history section. So I went over there and I grabbed another one by a Protestant historian, cracked that bad boy open, read through it, and I'm going like, wow. It's just the same thing. It was the same thing. A little slight interpretation difference, but it was the same thing. The histories all were the same. Okay. So what do I do now? I got it. I'll become Orthodox because there was an Orthodox priest there. Right? So there was this Orthodox priest in there. I'm like, got it. I can't go Catholic
I was going to say
because,
that's your ABC moment. Anything but
but
Catholic. Yeah.
exactly, you got it. I never heard that.
You haven't heard that? That's
No.
exactly what you are describing right there. But go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going there, and I'm going to the Orthodox, and I'm learning about it, and I learn about the Eucharist, and I learn about Mary, and I learned about all these things and everything else and everything, and I knew that they had nothing to do with the Catholic Church, but they were pretty much close to Catholic, except for making the sign of cross backwards. So that's kind of crazy. Uh, the funny thing about that was when I became Catholic, I had to relearn how to do the sign of the cross. I'm like, I already know. No, you don't. Anyway, so I'm doing all this, and I am ready to enter the Orthodox Church. God is so funny. He's got a sense of humor. You think the platypus is funny? You ought to hear this. So all of a sudden, the priest and the deacon are no longer coming to the yard. They stop coming. They just like disappeared. They stopped coming. And I'm like, wow, what do I do? I believe in the Eucharist. I believe in the presence of Christ in the Eucharist. I understand. That's his body. That's his blood. What am I supposed to do? I can't go back to the Baptist. I can't go to any other. What am I going to do? So, lo and behold, here comes Tim. He goes, well, we have a class that's over here. It's pretty close to what you were studying. It's called Catholic Inquiry. Catholic Inquiry. Yeah, it's taught by Father John O'Sullivan. Oh, okay. And that's where I met Father O'Sullivan, and I met Dick Gallegos, and great group of guys. Well, I go in there, I go, all right, Father, what's up? And I'm challenging him every step of the way. And I'm telling you, with that Irish priest, first off, what was impressive was he welcomed me in, and then I found out later he did missionary work in Africa, so he's used to dealing with dark-skinned people. All right, so so um, and I'm going like, so I'm in a class full of men, and I go, Father, I don't want to monopolize your time, but let's talk about Mary. Father, I don't want to monopolize your time, but let's talk about the Eucharist. Father, I don't want to monopolize your time, but what's this thing about Vatican II? What's this thing about Latin? Do I have to learn Latin? I can't even speak Spanish. Let's learn Latin, okay? Um, because I took Spanish ever since middle school, and I still have to this day still can't speak a word of Spanish, all the way through college. Anyway, so it was so funny, and we just kept going and going and going and going, and finally, Father, I'm ready. He says, no, you're not. I said, yes, I am. And he's trying to go. He goes, no, you're not. I said, yes. You understand, Father, even if you don't confirm me, I'm Catholic. I am Catholic. And I told the whole room that. I said, you guys may not have me. I don't know what this whole thing about confirmation is, everything. Well, I did. But, I saw it. But I'm Catholic. It's over. It's a wrap. I don't care what you guys say. I don't care about your ritual or anything else. I'm there. That's Christ. I understood that. Mary's my mother, which was another blessing in disguise that happened. And so, so finally, they said, okay, we're going to get you ready for the church. So the first thing I wanted to do, and this is what I wanted to do, I wanted to get steeped into the church. I want to get steeped into the Bible. So I did it. I got the Book of Christian Prayers. You know what that is, right? Liturgy hours, every day, faithfully. I wanted to learn the rosary. So the guys put a class together to teach me the rosary. Now that's such a beautiful thing because from that class that prepared me for confirmation was also a class that became a mainstay 7 days a week that we had men praying the rosary. And it all started from me wanting to, hey guys, can you teach me how to pray the rosary? So that was just awesome. So I learned how to pray the rosary. I was if you, another side, good friend of mine, Joe Inneking, I was just at his burial over the weekend. Got to go up to Cottonwood, visit with his family. I took a bunch of us went up there because we wanted to let her know that her father's life was not wasted in prison. That through her father helped all of us become Catholic. But that's so. I forgot where I was going with that. Anyway, so oh yeah, I know where I was going. The running joke is Joe Enneking, when he passed, he was about 85, 87, something like that. But I always joked. I said the reason why Joe can't walk is because I used to walk around the ball field just picking his brain, just like cutting his skull open and just getting everything. What did you do as a kid as a Catholic? What was Catholic school like? What was that? You know, so I was just absorbing everything. And as a matter of fact, I scared Tim because I even did the Seder because I wanted to find out what Passover was like. So I even went to a Jewish Seder just to get that experience, and everything else. So I was really so. I think it was 2000. I should have did my research because I don't remember dates too well. But I think it was two, except for a real important one. So I should remember that one. But I think it was around 2002. Bishop Tim Driscoll.
Mike?
Mike, thank you. Bishop Mike Driscoll confirmed me in the Catholic Church in the prison.
2002?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes. And I remember, I think it was around there. I have to check, but it was around 2000, 2003. I think it was around there. And I'll never forget it because Mike Chipola, biggest goof off, um, good Christian brother, good Catholic brother. But he told me about this thing about they slap you when you're getting confirmed, right? So he tells me the story. He says, they slap you when you get confirmed. I said, no, he ain't slapping me. He says, well, that's part of the deal. He says, well, you're going to have to take it. I said, okay, Mike. So when I met Bishop Driscoll, I shook his hands, and his hand dwarfed mine. I'm like, oh my God, this is going to hurt. And anybody who knows about me, I was a fighter back then, so I had to, as I was being confirmed, I had to make sure that I kept my hands behind my back and clenched. So when he went to slap me, I didn't slap him back. So, but of course that never happened. But it was so funny because the guys were laughing as I was sitting there. Go ahead, give me your best shot. Anyway, so, but I was confirmed Catholic, and I was Catholic, and I was all the way there, man. I love it. Love the church. So, needless to say, we had a lot of great volunteers come and go over the time, and unfortunately, we lost Tim to pancreatic cancer. Um, what a trooper. I got to tell you this. Tim refused to check into the hospital or anything else. Tim was faithful to coming to that rosary every day while he was sick. And I was there when he prayed his last rosary. And then when he went back to the unit, that's when they shipped him downtown and he passed away. And I remember looking at that. I'm going, that's what I want to do. I want to go like that. Always with the Lord first. That was a beautiful example. Now, talk about Mary. It was a godsend that I was so glad that I was confirmed Catholic. Because my mom was sick, and they were people were working hard to get me back in front of the board to have them change their decision and everything else. Now, I was satisfied with it now. I was comfortable.
Meaning if you were there
If I
for
was there
life.
for life.
Got
I was
it.
comfortable with it. And so they were working hard. Well, my mom body wore out. And when my mother passed away, I remember talking to my sister on the phone, and I said, Sylvia, now I know what it feels like to be an orphan. See, my father passed away first. And I said, now I know what it feels like to be an orphan. She goes, what are you talking about? I said, I feel like an orphan. I have no one. connection. I have no one. And then I went to bed that night, and I remember this dream. And the dream said, it was Jesus saying, son, behold your mother. Mother, behold your son. And that's where my devotion to Mary really began. And I knew that Jesus gave me his mother, not to replace, but to at least comfort me when I needed comfort, just like a real mom, just like a mom. You know what I'm saying? So through another volunteer, we started the Legion of Mary in the place, and we did all this stuff. We just like the whole. We just kept growing, and it was just beautiful. And I remember it was in my heart, and I prayed to God, and I said, Father, don't let me pass away from this earth until I'm able to be in your house. I wanted to be in his house. Something. I said, Lord, don't let my eyes close until I am in your house. So as the years go by and everything else, we're going through. I get bored, denied, bored, denied, bored, denied.
Every
Now,
5 years consistently? Is that what
not
it
every
was?
5 years, because I had to put in. I received two drop deads. I'm sorry, and then a couple of tens
Got
and
it.
threes and fives and everything else. So it all combined out to 42 years in prison. All right. Now, had that prayer, had that dream. My cell, you walk in my cell, you go, yeah, he's Catholic. I got the Holy Family here, and I got that there, and I got, carrying my rosary everywhere I go. The rosary is such a funny story because, when you carry your rosary, we get what we call patted down and shook down and everything else until the guards hit the rosary. Then it's all like, what is that? What's my rosary? Can I touch it? Well, yeah. Can you open it up for me? Yeah. Yeah. No, I don't want it. Put it back. Okay. So I was like, wow, this is really a weapon.
It's powerful to say the
Powerful.
least.
It backs off the COs.
So go ahead. Go ahead. You were going to
No,
say.
no, go ahead.
I'm curious about that final board meeting. You go in fully expecting to never come out,
Well,
right? Or was that changing because of the petitions that were happening for the
well,
increased
here's the thing
boards?
is everybody was pulling for me but me.
Hmm.
You understand what I'm saying? Everybody was pulling for me. I was like, yeah, okay, if it happens, it happens. No, your life has changed. You deserve to get out. Yeah, okay, fine. But you know what? I'm happy doing God's work in this prison. And I mentored people. I did hospice. I did all this stuff. So I was comfortable with it. Had that kind of life, and so I go to that board, and I'm going like, okay, fine. And I had a great attorney. His name was Craig Durham. And as I was interviewing with him, I'm going, okay. And he goes, no, we're going to get them to, every time you go to the board, and I was looking over your transcripts, you always look at chapter 1, how you got in.
Sure.
He says, we're going to make them turn the page. We're going to let them see this change in you. We're going to make them see this change. So I'm sitting there, and this is during COVID time, so we had to do the video, audio, the camera board and everything else. So I'm sitting there, and I'm in front of the camera, and everything else going through the board. And I say my piece. I don't remember what I said. Everybody else said their piece. I had a couple people talking for me and everything else and everything. I'm like, okay, this is pretty much going the same way. And my victim's daughter spoke, and that really affected me a lot too. And that's that's the part I skipped over. But anyway, so then Craig stands up, and he starts going through, and he said, quote for quote, all right, so you guys, you've done a masterful job and everything else. You guys are doing great. But let's turn the page and let's talk about Mr. Austin today. So he goes through my whole history and everything else and tells me, what I've been doing, how I've been doing, what people think of me, and all that stuff like that. Then they call me out to the room. Well, I sit back down and I hear wah wah, wah 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 wah. So when you get done, we want you to sign some paperwork and everything, and so he has everything in place. Everybody agrees, and I'm looking at it. I'm going like, what just happened? So I'm looking at my case manager, and I'm getting ready to. It's like, excuse me, what just happened? And she stops me. She goes, "You got an open date." I said, "Yeah, what? What? You got an open date?" Now, I know what an open date means. Open date means I can go out the gate anytime now from that moment on. And I'm like, huh? Yeah, you got an open. And everybody wants to hug me and everything else. I'm, I'm like, okay. I
2023? Is that when this was happening?
2020, yeah, it was 2023. Yeah, 2023. No, 2024. It was January of 2024.
18 months ago.
Yes. I got out in February 20th of 2024. That was my first subscription. So, and I'm shocked. I'm like, so I go back to work, and I just continued to do what I was doing, and everything else. I'd lead the rosary. I'd do the at that time because of COVID and everything else. We're trying to bring everything else back. So we're doing the chapel services. We're trying to do all that stuff. So I just continue to do what I do. Everybody go, man, you got a date? I'm like, yeah. What's next?
And you had mentioned to me that you had made a promise that if you ever got out, you wanted to focus. Well, first of all, you wanted to be in the Father's house. But then you mentioned about the housing. At
Well,
least I thought that's what you. Go ahead.
didn't know how that was going to work, but here's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
For 42 years, and this is my thinking, for 42 years, I've been a drain on society. All you guys been doing is been pouring money into prisons to support a dumb behind person like me. All right? So I never had to worry about anything. I wanted to be able to contribute back. I wanted to give back to what you poured into me. All right? And I also, at the same time, wanted to help someone else. There's this old story. I'm from Connecticut. I didn't tell you that. I'm from Connecticut. So one of the things I always hear about, how can you keep a crab in an open pot? You put another crab in there. See, because every time the crab goes to climb out of the bucket or the pot, the other crab will grab him and pull him down, and then he will try to climb out. So this is where and I wanted to be the guy who be on the sits down and go, here, let me help you up and pull you out. So yeah, I always wanted to be involved. The great Catholic volunteers, not just Catholic, all volunteers, all religious volunteers, were such an inspiration to me to be able to come in and I forgot the scripture, but I know it's in Matthew. Um, Set the prisoners free. Always want to be that, the sheep and the goats. That's the Lord. When did I see you and help you? And I always wanted to be in that realm and everything else. So the house is God directing me into that direction. Because trust me, I was trying to go someplace else.
So talk about that. Talk about the housing and
Okay.
what your goal is.
All right. Basically, what it boils down to is I was blessed because when I got out, 20 years before I got out, I met a guy named Rob Lee, and he has a house. It's called Bethel, and it's a Christian house. And I'm going, great, a Christian house. This is awesome. So 20 years later, of course, I get to move in. It's great. We have dinners together. We pray in the morning. Everything else. Great group of Christians and everything else. That's great. And so I was up at, I guess you call it the chancellery. It was, I don't know where it's at. And I'm still learning voicing. And I was at the chancellery and I happened to run into Bishop Christensen. And he goes, "How you doing? Where you living? Everything else." I'll tell him about Bethel. He goes, "Yes, it would be nice if we had a Catholic house." Seed planted. Seed planted. I'm like, wow, you would like to have a Catholic halfway house? You? Okay, let's make it happen, Captain. No, I didn't go that, but it was planted in my head, and I wanted to go into prison ministry, but every time I was trying to get into the prison, the door was shut. The door was shut, shut, shut. So, if you haven't figured out, I love telling stories. Anyway, so um, what happened? What transpired is that started to take root. That whole idea of possibly creating a house. Now, I'm one guy. I don't know how to do it. So I get with. So I'm talking to Dick Gallegos, who
He's
by
now known
far
for 20 years, right? By
I've
now?
known him for almost. It seems like forever.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I run into Dick Gallegos, and so we start formulating this idea of possibly building a house together. So we get with Mike Gallagher, and we get with Deacon Mark Garrity, and so we're sitting in the Starbucks. Don't hate me. Don't hate us for it. But it's a Starbucks. Anyway, so we're sitting in the Starbucks, and we're talking about this, and we're coming up with this idea on how to make it happen. And I'll never forget Deacon Mark sitting there, and he goes, "Wow, this is really going to happen." And when he said that, it was already in my head. I'm like, "Oh my God, this is really going to happen." So we started forming this house. So it's a dream of all of ours to form a house in which um, men can, pretty much a Catholic house where they can practice their faith and also help men adjust back into society. See, because especially with all the years, thank you, Jesus, that I had a ton of support when I came out. More so much so that some people were jealous of the support I had. I'm like, I'm sorry, my bad. Anyway, but a ton of support. And I would like to give that support to other men who are coming out.
Wow.
I'd love to be able to um, walk them through the process of preparing. So we're gathering resources left and right. We have some other good Christian brothers who are former residents who are coming forth and saying, "Yeah, I had this issue. Can we do something so guys don't run into this issue? I had this issue. Can we do something and we're starting to come together and we're going like, okay, so what do we do? So this house that we're forming together is hopefully going to be a holy family house in which we eat together, pray together, support each other day in, day out, you know, and help each other move on to the next phase of our life. Okay, so you go from prison confinement to a house out here. Now, don't get me wrong, but I got to say this. When we come out of prison, all of a sudden it's like the shackles are off and we want to taste and feel everything. I'll never forget my first experience in Walmart. You guys have a lot of cereals out there that I've never seen before. And it was so funny. I was sitting there in Walmart and I wanted to get one adult cereal and one child cereal. Okay? One children's cereal. And I'm sitting there looking at all these cereals. Next, you know, my phone buzzes in my pocket. I pick it up. It's the guys who drove me to the store. They go, "Where are you?" I said, "I'm in the cereal aisle." They go, "You've been there for about a half hour, and we're out in the parking lot waiting for you." Oh, so anyway, choices are, are tough for people to get now, and all the experience. And I love what Ralph Lee did because he had me going around, and I didn't get arrested for it, but I slapped a stop sign. Uh, touched a tree. There's no trees out there, so I got to touch a tree. Uh, Funny story, as I always said, that I wanted to climb a tree when I was younger. I said, "I can't wait to get out. I want to climb a tree," because there's no trees out there. And so a friend of mine asked me, he said, "Did you climb a tree?" I said, "I'm 67 years old. Do you expect me to climb a tree?" if I climb up the tree, you'll see me on the 10 o'clock news. Firefighters had to come out and rescue an old man from a tree. So I said, I'm going to save all that. I'm just going to touch the tree. So I got a picture on my phone of me touching my first tree. Anyway, so sorry, squirrel.
No, that's
But anyway, the house is about helping people through those experiences of all this sensory, all this freedom
yeah.
coming back to you. And I watched men who have been able to take it and successfully navigate it. So I'm asking them to not live in the house, but be mentors to the men in the house.
Beautiful.
To help them. Matter of fact, it was so funny. When we went to Cottonwood, I was talking to a friend of mine, and he's a truck driver. I said, well, how'd you get into truck driving? Oh, and it was a long, drawn-out story and everything else. And he gets to the part where he went to truck driving school and everything else and got permission to do all this truck driving from his PO and blah, 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 this and that. And now he's driving truck. And I looked at him and go, great, you're hired. And my other friend who works with me on the board for the halfway for the house, the initiative, and he goes, you better ask him what you're hired for. He goes, but you thought it was me, or you trust me? And I'm going like, you shouldn't trust me. You're hired to be a mentor. You just passed your interview. So he's like, what? I said, yeah. I'm going to give you a call, and I'm going to hook you up with somebody who probably is interested in truck driving. And that's what I've been doing, is out here gathering resources. Now we've been looking at houses and everything else. And so we're really excited about this.
As you should be. We were talking about this before. The rate of recidivism in the nation is 70% within 5 years. And those programs that focus on spirituality, faith-based transitional homes, it reduces it by, I don't even know if it was 60% or 55%. So what you're doing is admirable, and it's not just to stay in one spot. It's to get these men to help other people, and I love that. And I also think of you as Zacchaeus, but you didn't get into the tree. I wanted to say that. You want to get a look at the Lord. You did so much over the years to open your heart to the Lord. But again, as you came out, you didn't make it into the tree, but you touched the tree. And I just think it's the picture I got in my head was just a man that you never lost truly what began from the roots in Connecticut, that Baptist church, and that love that you had. Remember even when you were pushing God away, he saw the whole thing and he knew that you were going to come back with force to help others, to better this community, and to set things right. And that's what God does for those that are willing to do his work. And that's what I see in you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. I do like to ask this often. What's important for the audience of Catholic Recon is very diverse in their backgrounds. Some are discerning the faith. Some want to reconnect with the faith or ensure that they feel strengthened. What would be just a general message that you'd want them to take away from your story?
There's hope. There's hope. Before I didn't have any hope. I came from a place of hopelessness, but there is hope in Christ. And, if you could take anything away from my story then it's twofold. It's about redemption, coming back from the darkness into the light, and that it can happen. I've talked to several people about that, I love using my mom's quote, when I talk to parents whose children seem to have lost their way and walked away from the faith. I go, you did your job. You planted the seed. Let God do the watering and the rest. You're okay. You're going to be okay. I was so blessed that my father and my mother saw me come back to the faith. That's one thing. But there's another thing that is really, really important is forgiveness. Help us who are returning back to society, because we carry a lot of guilt and baggage. even with our faith, we still carry this guilt and baggage. You know, at this present time, as I'm sitting here talking to you and looking at you and being in this studio, I'm like, how do I deserve this after what I've done? So I have it's tough for a lot of us to forgive ourselves, especially when we come to Christ. It is so tough. We can go to confession, we can do all that, but it's so tough to forgive ourselves for where we came from, to appreciate the light that Christ has given us. And at the same time, we ask for forgiveness from those as we return. Yes, we did some bad things. But as I share with my friends who are facing trials and tribulations out here, who are ready to give up, I remind them, don't give up. You are a new creation. You are living, Christ is living in you and you are living in Christ. Continue to march as that so. You know, it's just like, side story, I broke into the church when I first got out. You know?
I want to hear that.
Okay. I call it broke into church, but the church was unlocked. But anyway.
Same thing.
As I said before, I wanted to be in the Father's house.
Yep.
Desperately. I'm living behind St. Mark's. And I'm thinking, I'm going like, okay, I got to get my PO's permission to go to church. I'm waiting for these supposed people. You know, I had 3 people lined up to take me to my first mass. But I wanted to go, and we're all waiting for this permission for me to go. And I'm like, okay. So I go into St. Mark, go in the office and say, hey, I'm new. Can I take a look around the church? Yeah, go ahead. Take a look around the church. Found out the schedule. And I snuck down for a mass. Snuck into the church. No permission or nothing. I sat in the back pew. But you know what's so beautiful about it? I love, you know, what all the volunteers did, because soon as the opening, you know, as soon as they processed down the aisle, I knew everything. I knew every kneel. I knew every prayer. I knew every step. I knew everything. I was home. I was home. And see, the thing is that's the kind of training that's going out there in prison. In the prisons, men are being trained as Catholics to participate in the Catholic faith. Now, hate to say this, but I have to say this. When they get out of here in this community, we have not felt welcomed. There are some who are frustrated. I have a good friend. I love him to death because even though he has been rejected, cannot come into the church, he is still a Catholic. Staunched. He is rock solid. But he has not turned away. And then I have another friend who's completely turned away. He said, they rejected me. They wouldn't welcome me. Why should I be in a situation like that? And I said, it's because of Christ. Don't look at people. Look at Christ. My friend looks at Christ. He wants to be like I did, want to be in his house. Even though people are trying to shut the door on him, he still wants to be in his house. That's love. That's the love of Christ. He wants to be with him. He wants to be at his feet.
Beautiful.
There's other people that just, you know. So this is something that, you know, I'm hoping that this house initiative will help break that stigma.
That's what I was just going to say.
Help break that stigma, because if we can get a group of men in there and let the community know who we really are, then that gives us an opportunity for you to recognize us, to accept us and everything else. Because I understand, we're just coming out. Who the heck are you? And I'm trying to clean my language up because it's all on radio, but I wanted to say something else. But, you know, who are you? You know, who's this guy that just walked in? You know, another side that really inspired me for the house and inspires me for the church. As I was sitting there and I was at a mass, I saw a guy. He was standing there. I could tell by his mannerism We all, cons, no cons.
Sure.
I could tell he just came out of prison. I walked over to him, and, after he was so confused and lost, I walked over to him. I said, hey, brother, welcome home. Welcome home. And I meant that in the sense of welcome to the world, real world, and then welcome to the church world. Welcome home. And that's what we're all asking for, is to be welcomed home after we have done that.
You are a blessing, my friend. Thank you so much for sharing that. Everyone, please share this testimony.